Welcome to the Evidence Informed Teaching Podcast. Are you a teacher wanting to improve your classroom practice and deliver excellent teaching through access to research? Do you have a passion for teaching and are looking to connect with other like-minded colleagues through professional discussions? The Chartered College has partnered with TeacherTap to support teachers to deliver excellent teaching through access to research, and we invite you to be part of this community. On this podcast, you will hear from fellow teachers, research experts, and you have the opportunity to be part of this professional discussion. You can find out more about the Chartered College of Teaching and TeacherTap in the show notes. And if you find this episode helpful, why not share it with a teacher friend, take a screenshot and post it on your social media, or even better, leave us a 5-star written review. Hello and welcome. I'm really excited to invite an early career teacher onto the podcast today. So Mathieu Ishimwe is with us today. I'm not going to introduce him. I'm going to let him do the honours. But I really hope that this episode today is going to be helpful, particularly to our student community, as Mathieu is going to be talking about his experience as a student and what he's up to as an early career teacher, and then also how he makes the most of the Chartered College and the resources that we have and how it supports him in his training and also as an early career teacher. So welcome to the podcast, Mathieu. I'm going to get you to introduce yourself, maybe tell us a bit about why you decided to become a teacher. I always love, as a teacher myself, I always love to hear what brings other people to the profession, and then maybe talk a bit about your current role and also your path to becoming a teacher as well.
My name is Mathieu, and I teach MFL at secondary school, mainly French, from year 7 all the way till year 13. And I become a teacher because I've always been passionate about teaching since a very early age. Like I remember I have 3 brothers, and I'm the oldest, and I used to play the teacher, and I really used to love her. And my mom is also a teacher, and I've always been inspired by work of teachers. And I think coming to Europe as a refugee, it was teachers that really helped me actually learn French when I was little, and then that's why I wanted to give back to the community, and that's why I chose mainly to work with disadvantaged community mostly, to kind of give back to the community, and that's the reason why I became a teacher.
Teaching is in your family, which is exciting. And then we hear this a lot, don't we, about teachers? We want to give back and we want to support other people and help. The belief of how important education is to opening doors and opportunities to people. So tell us a bit about your route into teaching. So you teach MFL. There's lots of different routes into teaching. Which way did you go to become a teacher?
I chose the university-led routes. So I went on to do a PGCE in Modern Foreign Languages in Canterbury, Christchurch. So that was the route I've taken, and it was really, really interesting because, especially I guess for me, especially in Kent, it was really interesting to see the difference between different type of schools. So I was fortunate to see how to teach in a state school, but also my second placement was in a grammar school, and it was really, really interesting to see the differences when it comes to education and even attainment and things like that. And I decided to start as an early career teacher after I chose the state school system. I had an amazing time there. I've managed to make amazing working relationship during my PGCE, and they really wanted me back, so I went back there. So
you did your PGCE through Christchurch. So in terms of your teacher training, let's dig into that a little bit. What would you say for you were the best bits about your training?
The students, I think as soon as you start being in front of your students, I almost felt oh, okay, this is what I'm supposed to do. I think it's like this, especially because I'm teaching languages as well. So the challenge was to actually make them interested in in my lessons. And like, so it was really, really hard for me to kind of, in the beginning, to make them understand like how valuable having a second language will be important, and how much impact it will make in their own career. And so I was mostly using my example, because I actually came into teaching as a career change. I used to work for charity, as a policy advisor for charities, and I work like in different countries, and I lived in different countries, and I speak several languages. So I always use my experience as a way to motivate them, and to especially when you teaching in working class communities, for example, like there will be many people that never left where they live, and I think it was, yeah, I was really trying to inspire them. And also I think I had yeah, I think that's one was the best part as well. I had this amazing mentor, and she was really, really supportive. She was amazing, and we developed really, really good working relationships. And I felt like I was able to uh, not only to progress well, but also to be challenged. And I think she was able to recognize my strength, but also my weaknesses. And I think her delivery was done in such a nice way. I felt like I could be up to the challenge, and it's really, really amazing. I think when feedback is done in I mean, fair but kind delivery, I would say.
Yeah, absolutely. And mentors are so important to the trainee teacher experience. And that's one of the reasons we have a specific chartered pathway for teachers who are mentors, because it's a really challenging role to be a mentor, and it's often something that people don't sort of really get recognized for. And that's why it's so important that we recognize how important our mentors are. So I know that we're talking mainly today sort of for students and early career teachers, but I think if there are mentors, and I'm sure there are mentors listening to this episode, what piece of advice would you say? I mean, you mentioned a couple of things that your mentor did really well. What would you sort of say to the mentors that is really important that your mentor did for you that made that relationship really, really strong, do you think?
I think for me, it was the fact that she allowed me to find my teacher persona alone. So because I think at some point she noticed that I was using a lot of her phrases, and especially when it comes to behavior management, and actually she allowed me to find my path. And I think it was like, if I had to give an advice, it's just like to, because PGC can be such an intense year. And I think it's, if I had to give an advice, it's also like to kind of check regularly on the well-being of your ECT, or of your ACT, or even trainees in school. So I think it's so important, because sometimes I feel like when you've been in teaching for some time, like we forget some. I mean, there's definitely the challenges are still there, obviously, but you forgot, like, where you started. And I think it's so important to care about the well-being of the trainee as well, and to allow them to actually make mistakes, and you learn from mistakes. And we should never forget that, because we are actually teachers, and that's what we tell our students as well.
I really, really like what you said there about allowing the trainees the space to become their person and not sort of, the image or the mirror image of their mentor. So thank you so much for sharing us. So you've shared a bit about the best bits. And as you mentioned, like teacher training, and I've been a teacher for over 15 years, and my training years do seem like a long time ago. And I really enjoyed mentoring the trainees that we had in our school. And like you said, it's very easy to forget what it's like and the challenges. So what challenges did you face as a trainee? And have you got any advice of how you overcame them? What did you do?
One of the challenges I faced was definitely, I really needed to be okay with the fact that not every lesson will be perfect. Sometimes, like, you will spend hours and hours having a lesson plan and preparing everything, and and then it's just and it's just a nightmare in the classroom. Like the delivery is not good because there's different like external factors that can happen as well. And I think you need to be, I think, kinder to yourself. And I think also, as soon as any difficulty arise, it's really really important to keep in touch with your, your provider, or like, or the university, if you're choosing to do the PGCE route. And I think being proactive, it's so so important. Being proactive, like, in so many ways, because you need to be able to communicate with your tutor. I'm using the word tutor because I chose the university route, but yeah, I think being proactive in communication is key. And then also, I think it's also about, teaching is a vocation for you. Just don't give up. And it gets, I know, I didn't even, like, people will say like it gets easier, get easier. And even myself, when I was a PGC trainee, I was like, no, it's not. But at the end, it did get easier. And then you're so proud of your achievement. And it's very intense, but it's totally worth it.
And that's advice that I think students, ECTs, really experienced teachers, we all need to hear that again sometimes, that, we spend a lot of time planning and trying to make sure these lessons are amazing. And particularly when you're a trainee, you really do spend a lot of time on the planning of the lessons. And it can be so disheartening when it doesn't go right. And there are so many things that are going on that just aren't in your control. And it's accepting that, isn't it? And being okay with that's going to happen. So thank you so much for sharing that with us. That's definitely sort of quite an important thing, I think, for our trainees to remember. I think the PGCE, as you mentioned earlier, is a challenging year. It's a really challenging year. And you've got the classroom practice and also the academic element of the course as well. So have you got any advice for the students about how they can manage the two? What did you do to sort of, look after yourself in that process?
I think for me, it was definitely having. So actually, so look at the dates, like when your essays are due, and then I think you need to inform your school. And I think it's also important because sometimes there will be things, and because also like of we have like a crisis and retention in so like I think sometimes there's things that unfortunately, because of the retention crisis and recruitments, like that they will expect for you to do, but you're allowed to say no as well, and you're allowed to actually pause and then actually remind them that you're still a student, and you actually a university student, and there's essays due, and there's research project as well. Like I remember, like my PGC was very much evidence based, so there was lots of like essays to write, and lots of research as well on side of the planning, the teaching, and sometimes the marking. And so you need to be, I think communication is key again. I think it's just like, making sure that they are aware of uh, of your submission dates, and because we all have different routes. I think, and I think sometimes it's important to tell them which route you actually are in. They seem to sometimes, it happens that they forget. And yeah, and I think in terms of essay, I mean, it's really important to, yeah, to really go and explore research in education as well, and because you're living it. And I think it's really easy as well to find articles and research that actually tell you about why this is happening to you. And and I think it's really really good as well. Like sometimes it's almost like therapeutic in a way.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, we're sort of coming back again to this point about communication between the mentor and the trainee, and telling your mentor that you have an essay and this is when the essay is due, because your mentor is going to be busy. They've got a busy workload themselves, so they're not always going to know. And I think that's quite a really valid point to make. So you touched on evidence. Now we're on the evidence-informed teaching podcast. The Chartered College really is about evidence-informed teaching and our resources. And as students, we give our student community free membership to the Charter College so they can access a huge wide range of resources. Did those, I mean, obviously you use those in your course as a student. Maybe you could touch on a little bit about what you did. How did those resources help you as you were doing your training?
So for me, like one of the great theory that I use was like the self-determination theory when it comes to languages. So actually, understanding whether students using intrinsic or extrinsic motivation to learn the language, and I think it's really important. And I think it's just about identifying these two type of students and actually working with them, like maybe in different ways, like and finding techniques that you could use. But I think it's really important, like to know that it's called, I think you can look it up, it's called like the self-determination theory, and you can apply that to MFL. And so yeah, that I think is something that I'm still using as well as ECT2 actually. So yeah, and I think it's really important, as well as, especially if you're doing the PGC led routes, you it's really important because you still have to write essays, and I think you find like such a wide range of resources with the Chartered College of Teaching, and there's so many, and you have a free membership as well. So there's so many things that you can. It's always backed by research, so you can use this research to actually like make your point, illustrate your point, like when writing essays.
I always say when I'm delivering the presentations to the students that I wish this existed when I was doing my training, because it would have saved me a lot of time having all of this information in one place that's actually set out within the early career framework standards as well. So it's really easily laid out.
I just want to add as well, like about there's also things about culture. How do we make a school culture better when it comes to I was reading this really interesting article about how do we actually implement, how do we develop an inclusive school, and like how do we actually take account, like for example, when it comes to our LGBTQ plus students or our Black students, and how do we actually make the environment safer for them in the first place, and what strategies that you can use, and it's about and you can even implement that within your curriculum. And I've always been passionate about diversity and inclusion, and I really also like that you can use evidence-based research as well to make your classroom a safe and inclusive environment for everyone.
We've spoken a little bit about your training, which probably feels almost a bit like a lifetime ago as an ECT2 now. And so let's talk about the transition between training to ECT, and maybe sort of back up a bit and maybe talk about like the process of finding a job. How did you find that?
For me, I got my first job through my first placements, because I work really hard, and I was actually developing these relationships with my classes, and so they asked me if I would be happy to take the job. But I think there's so many ways to find jobs. You can go on tests. There's also the Department of Education website that you can get you're notified by email, but you can also like use like different channels like LinkedIn. I guess like I would say like I'm very fortunate because I teach MFL, and it's unfortunately it's a subject in huge shortage. I think the looking at things like your statement as well, and then making sure that you know what the school culture is as well. Do not use the same statement, for example, for every, and then send it to every school. I think you need to make sure that you research in the school. You need to make sure that you know the ethos, and you need to make sure that also your ethos align with your own values as well. And I think it's about researching the school, and maybe even before going for an interview, like why not actually ask to visit the school, and then have a sense of the school. And I think for one of your question as well was the transition between PGCE and ECT. It was a huge transition because as ECT1, you have your QTS, you're a qualified teacher, teacher. So you actually manage your own classes. There's no one there to guide you, and all of a sudden you're just the adult in the room. And I think for me, it was challenging. I mean, not really. I mean, it was challenging at first, but it was exciting at the same time because now you can make your own relationship with your students, and you know them better, and you work with them all year long, and you get to know them, and you know their weaknesses and their strength, and you know how to help them. And so I think in a way it's a lot of work, but this is also an opportunity as well to actually discover yourself as a teacher as well. And I think I think what's really, really important as well is just to always be kind to yourself. Be kind to yourself, but then also be able to have, you need to be self-reflective on your practice as well. So take feedback from experienced teachers on board, and then just try and be a reflexive practitioner is really, really important. Like, don't take feedback personally, and I think yes, but also obviously the delivery needs to be kind.
Yeah, definitely be kind to yourself, and
Yes.
that transition is definitely a challenge. And I really like what you said about being reflective, and it's something that as teachers is really important throughout the whole of your career. The process of feedback, learning from other more experienced colleagues as well. And that's one of the great things about being, and I hope you'd agree with me with this, is being a member of the Charter College actually opens up a network of other teachers and a huge wealth of resources. And particularly, I think a really good resource that always comes to mind when we're talking about being reflective was actually within the early career framework. There's a lot of classroom practice videos, and they're really short videos, about 5 minutes each, and they're around topics like behavior. I think there's such a great opportunity to look at that video, because you're not always going to get a chance to go and see other people in other schools and that sort of thing. But it allows you to look at that video and really reflect on what's going on in that video, but be self-reflective in that process as well. So what I'd like to do is just kind of dig into a little bit more around the resources that you've had as a member of the college, so as a trainee, and then also as an early career teacher. Like, are there any resources in particular that have really helped and supported you? We were talking about impact before we hit the record button. So I'd really love to hear your thoughts on how those resources have helped you as a trainee and then as you've transitioned to become an ECT.
It's definitely the Impact magazine. I like to read.
There is a critical appraisal tool that we have in the membership platform that's a PDF that you can download, and you can actually use it to support you as you're reading through the impact articles. So I'd really encourage students to go and have a look at that. And we also have in the Early Career Hub, there is also an ECT membership book that has a lot of our top resources that we find our students and early career teachers access, and they're all in one place. And you can use this as sort of a springboard to get to find your way around our resources, because I know that it can feel quite overwhelming, all of the information that's there. So that's quite a good way to get started with the resources that we have. So Mathieu, I just want to say thank you so much for your time. And before we wrap up and we finish our lovely conversation today, is there any one piece of advice that you would like to give to a trainee teacher that's listening to this episode today? What is it, and why have you got that piece of advice for them?
So yeah, be kind to yourself, and sometimes good is good enough.
Brilliant. Okay, I think I need to get that on a t-shirt or something. Maybe be kind to yourself, and good is good enough. So thank you so much. And I really appreciate you sharing your experience with us, the transition between your teacher training and becoming an ECT. And of course, we wish you every success as you grow as a teacher. And of course, the Chartered College hopefully is going to continue to be part of your professional development, and I'm sure you're probably going to be one of our chartered teachers in the future. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much. It means a lot.